I had the great pleasure of being invited to Logically's second event, LogicCon, in Columbus, Ohio, the week of the 15th of October, 2024. Logically is a managed service provider, but a very large one. I've also had the great pleasure of being acquired. I was the first MSP to be acquired by Logically. So I feel like I'm really part of the community still, or part of the family still. But I went on site. They had a great event. I set up the podcast booth. I had a lot of great conversations with the staff of Logically, with some vendors that were there, and some other people. It was a great time. I'm humbled and thankful that I got the opportunity to do that. The following is one of the conversations at this great event. I want to thank Logically for letting me do this. I had a great time. Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others. What's your favorite chord?
My favorite guitar chord? Oh man. Probably C minor.
C minor. Why
Yeah.
C minor?
I just think it sounds like I don't know, foreboding or melancholy, I think.
C minor on the piano can actually be quite kind of chilling.
Yeah, it's like to me it's like a melancholy feeling.
What's the first chord you learned?
Oh, it was all the E, A, and D because you only need one finger.
E, A, and D. How do you need one finger for?
The top string's your E string.
Right.
So if you go on the second fret on the next string down, that's an E chord.
Right.
And
Oh.
then A, you just move down one.
I see what you did.
So like ROCK in the USA,
right.
that's all you need. That's
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
Most songs are 3 chords.
Yeah. Well, 3 or 4. Yeah.
3 or 4. Yeah.
It's always the joke, right? It's always the 3-chord wonder, right?
John Lennon famously said he only knew 3 chords. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, but he lies.
Of course
Yeah.
he does.
I play Beatles stuff, and he knows more than 3 chords.
It's. They make it. This sounds simple, but it's actually quite difficult to play those songs, isn't it?
Yeah, some of them are really bad. You know, I did that Eagles song last night.
That's right.
And I think I actually had to learn like 2 new chords for that.
Did you really?
Yeah, because I do a lot of 80s kind of stuff, and that stuff was all chunky,
Sure.
kind of hair metal stuff. And to make it acoustic, it's pretty easy, right? Most of the time.
Mm.
But yeah, you start getting into that kind of stuff, and like the Eagles and like the older Beatles stuff, and you have to start learning actual chords. It becomes a problem. Yeah.
I know like 6 or 7 chords. Right. Yeah.
Well, I say there's only 8 notes.
Yeah, there's only 8 notes. Yeah.
That's right.
And so I was at a wedding or something, and somebody was performing similar to you last night. You did a great job. And I said, you know, I know 6 or 7 chords. I just strum a little bit. And he said, well, that's more chords than I know.
There was this guy, Michael Skill in Michigan, I ran around with up in the 80s. And he had a book of like 300 chords, you know.
Whoa.
And he was great. I could open the book and pick a chord and he could play it.
Whoa.
He had learned all 300 of those chords.
So you say, E flat major 7. And
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was great. I was playing a lot. I hadn't played acoustic guitar. And at that point, I just had electric guitar. And of course, it was 80s hair music, so it was like 2 fingers all you need.
Right.
Just doing a bar chord everywhere you go. And if you could chunk with your other hand, you were good. And he said, you play guitar like a bass. Because he was a chord guy. He's like, you're playing guitar like a bass. So I started playing bass, is really what happened.
You like that more?
It was fun, and I've done it on and off. I joined a band then. It would have been 88, I'm thinking, 89, and I played bass in that band. Actually, I started playing guitar in that band and bought a bass because we couldn't find a bass player. So I started playing bass, and then when that kind of ended, I went back to guitar, and then a band here in Columbus, my first real band here in Columbus I was in, I went back to bass. And so I come back and forth. Being a singer, the bass is kind of fun, right? Because I think it takes a lot of pressure off of me. This hand, I can, for my right hand, I can chunk pretty good and not think about like rhythm. It's like just as a 4 or whatever. So I don't have to, it's a little more dynamic, I guess, when I'm singing.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Well, the Beatles didn't have a bass guitar, so Paul did it, right?
Yeah, Paul was the bass
yeah, he ended up being bass. But I mean, he plays a lot of acoustic.
Yeah, he plays a lot of guitar.
A lot, again, a wonderful songwriter and musician.
Yeah. Actually, with the Beatles, I really like the Paul songs the best.
Really?
Yeah,
so more poppy, melancholy.
Yeah, I always thought they had a better feel to them, a better groove to them. I think also Paul seemed a little more bluesy, right?
Interesting.
Like I always felt like he had a little more of a blues influence, and I like the blues stuff.
I see.
Even in the old hair metal days, it was like I really liked people like Great White and those guys. They were really, really blues based, right?
And John was a little more hard driving and a little more depressing.
Well, and he was also a little more what I would consider folky, right, in his writing.
Interesting approach, folky.
Yeah.
You kept seeing chunky. What do you mean by chunky?
Well, the '80s, right? So it's like you hear all the '80s hair bands. It's like chunk, 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 chunk. You know. So it's basically they're playing bar chords most of the time. So it's just 2 strings, right? And so if I have my finger on a fret on the second string, if I go down a string to the 3rd string and move up 2 frets and put my other finger, that makes a chord no matter where I am on the guitar.
Interesting.
At least for the first 4 strings, right? You get into the last 2 and it changes a little bit. So I can move that around very quickly. And so then with my other hand, I just have a pick and you kind of put your palm on the strings. So it's not really ringing out. It's like chunk, 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 chunk.
I see. So you kind of mute it.
Yeah, kind of muted it. Yeah.
Yeah, in the '90s we had a lot of downstroke bands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So what does that mean, downstroke?
It just means that they just you're stringing back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, it gets a little bit of a different sound,
Right.
Because if you're stroking down, you've got the low string, then the higher string.
Right.
But coming up, you get the high strings to the low string.
Interesting.
So it's a different feel on your ear, right?
Right.
In the 90s, it was a lot of guys just kind of just
Green
wailing
Day,
down.
yeah,
they're just stroking down on the guitar. It's interesting. I have a very close friend here in town, and we write music together. And he said something to me a few years ago that really got me. And he said, the newer music, 90s and all that. He said we got away from riff music, right? And we went to this like chorded music, and it really bummed him out.
Wow.
And I got to thinking about it. I said, it really bums me out too.
So Stone Temple Pilots, Pearl Jam, these Nirvana, these are chorded.
They're in his vernacular. Right?
I see.
It was more of a chorded thing where back in the day, I was really into he was too, like Judas Priest and Queensryche and the kind of the heavier
Slayer.
Slayer to a point. But I think he would probably Slayer would fit into his vernacular. But it was riffy. So there was a hook in the music, right? It was like a da 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 da. So you had this kind of riff that was like repeating and doing these things. When we get into the 90s, you end up with they're just kind of strumming a chord and they're singing over it, but there's not this movement in the background.
Interesting.
Right? It's more like a solid wall of sound in the background, but there's no movement really back there, right? It's all in the melody line, is all in the vocal line, right? Kind of a thing.
Wow.
Where like in the 80s, in that era, and then probably in the 70s too, I would think, kind of thinking back, where the music had a melody embedded in the music.
Wow. How do these trends happen, Randy?
I don't know. I really don't. It's interesting to watch, though. I have this theory that we quit teaching music in school in the 70s. Real music theory, right? If you listen to the band of like the 60s and 70s, those guys are doing really intricate stuff, and they're layering the music, right? There's a lot of layers. Also, they know things like this diminished chord really works well with this major C with a drop 7 and all this kind of stuff, right? So the music was way more complex. And so, but I think in schools, in primary school, K-12, right? I feel like we used to teach a lot more music theory, not just how to play your instrument, but why and how this works together. And I think over time, like even when I was in school, music class, we were taught very like, it was like, this is how you play your instrument. These are the notes, you can read the notes, right? But we didn't really get theory, I didn't feel.
Interesting.
And so I think as you've kind of worked that out of the school system, that the next generation out there getting famous playing music, well, they don't understand all that, right? And you know, and you don't have to really be a study. I've never had a actual guitar lesson, right, or anything like that. You just teach yourself, right? And I was probably in my 40s when I started to like really get into that kind of stuff, like what works and how does this layer, and you know, if I did this diminished thing behind this other thing, and what if you're playing this one thing and I'll play something completely different, but it'll be in the same key, right? And that kind of stuff, and how would that work together? And it's by trial and error, right? We learned it by trial and error, but I think the kids in the 50s and 60s that were getting famous in the 60s and 70s, they knew that stuff because they were taught it in school. So we've kind of dumbed down, right? We just dumbed it down.
Very interesting. You know, I remember vividly an interview with like Billy Joel, and they were asking him, why are you so great? What makes you so great? And he insisted that he was average, that he knew theory and he knew how to construct a song, but that there was so much not good out there that he kind of stands out a bit.
My favorite. So I think people who play piano, piano players are different.
Right.
Because they do learn a lot of that, right? Because they're using both hands. They kind of have a bass line going and a melody going, all that
they're doing it
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you think about the music, the popular music, right? How many pianos? They're all guitar players.
Right.
Right?
They're
It's all guitar players.
Yeah.
So we have less and less piano players. So I'm friends with Peter Potasniak, that goes by Peter Keys, and he's currently playing with, he runs around, plays with Leonard Skinner and all that. He's a piano player. I have keys players, people who play keys. I have two categories. I have keyboard players and piano players.
What's the difference?
The keyboard players are really good at hitting chords and making sounds.
Yes.
Right? Piano players they don't need any electricity. They can get on a piano and make it do whatever, right? And that's Peter.
It's such a beautiful instrument.
It is. It's such a beautiful instrument. And so I asked Peter one time, we went to see, he and some other friends have a band called All Time Low Stars, and we went to see him in Cincinnati. And they were packing up after the show, and I told him, I said, man, it's the first time I met him. And I said, I wish I could play piano like that. That's amazing. Like, how can you possibly get to that point? He's got like 6 hands going, right? It's just unreal. And he said, this is literally what he told me. He said, well, when I was a kid, I was learning to play piano while my guitar player friends were getting laid.
You hear stories like Van Halen about how Alex the drummer would go out and have dates, and Eddie would be on the bed playing guitar, and when he got back from the dates, Eddie
was still playing guitar.
That's right. He did not move. Yeah,
and I know guys like that.
Yeah,
I know guys that never left their bedrooms when they were kids.
Right.
They just 12 hours a day. That's all they did. Right. And you play with those guys now. And my friend Phil, I talked about earlier, that we write together.
Yeah,
he's like that. He is like, and the thing is, he doesn't think he's that good. Right, but he's phenomenal.
Wow.
I've never seen him not play anything great, right? But he's one of those guys that just did it and did it and did it and did it, and now it's just secondhand.
Wow,
it becomes a part of it.
Incredible.
Right? Yeah.
As far as like the blueprint of bands, I heard this theory. I don't know if you have, Randy, where it's the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. So the Beatles has like not a dedicated singer, two kind of back and forth and songwriting type, whereas Rolling Stones have a big front man who doesn't. And you can start think about all bands. You can think of a band like Aerosmith would be more has a front man, or I don't know, Oasis is more kind of double, you know, and that's kind of the blueprint of all bands. What do you think about that theory?
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that.
So just think of a band. I mean, obviously, Prince with Bruce Springsteen,
they're solo.
They're solo, pretty much. They have a band behind them. But when you think about like the Cars, okay, Rico Kasich and what's there. So that's they really never had a front man, because him and I forget the other gentlemen, they would switch vocals. Yeah. So I think they're more the Beatles kind of style.
Yeah, I would buy that.
Yeah,
I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, there are bands where everybody sings.
Right. It just rotates.
It just rotates around.
And then there's one which is Aerosmith is Tyler is the dedicated man out.
But it's
Black Crowes.
Oh yeah, Black Crowes. Yeah,
he's a singer, right?
Oh
the two brothers. He's the front man. He's that style.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
Right. It was always him.
Yeah.
It was always him, and it's kind of the blueprint of all.
Well, you
bands.
look at like Kiss, right?
Sure.
Kiss is like the foundation rock band, right?
Yeah,
They're like
yeah.
they're the 3-chord rock band.
Yeah, they sure are.
AC/DC falls into that same kind of thing. And the thing that always got me about those two was, well, they had a dedicated singer, except for like Peter Criss would sing a song,
Sure.
right? And
Gene was singing every once in a while.
Gene,
Yeah.
So it was like
It's mostly Paul.
Yeah, it was like Paul's our singer.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
Right, most of the time.
But Paul needs a break.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Paul's tired.
Yeah.
He's got to go backstage for a minute.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but I always thought that I hear people say like, well, AC/DC, wow, they just know 3 chords, and I'm like, yeah, they have like I don't know how many #1 albums that sold.
They're all billionaires.
They're all billionaires. I always do that. I like my wife gets me too because I hear stuff on the radio, like current stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, how'd this get on the radio, right? And she said, I don't know, where's your record deal, right? And I'm like, thanks, honey. Yeah.
This says something about you too. Right, he only knows like 3 chords and stuff, and what he does,
and he's very
them,
chunky.
He
chunks a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I was it Red Hot Chili Peppers, like their front guy, right?
Yes.
That people are like, Anthony. He could only sing for Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Right.
He would be horrible in any other band.
Else.
He can't carry a tune.
Right.
But because of their style of music, it works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That guy's not going out and doing like a musical.
No, he won't. Yeah. And then you have like all the Motown artists.
Oh, love Motown.
Oh my goodness, right? And there's this. You generally have a front singer, and you have a great band behind them.
Yep. And with 3 backup singers.
And 3 always, and incredible musicians.
Well, let's talk about Van Halen. Right, so you had
the odd dynamic there.
It is an odd dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? So you had the brothers.
Right.
And then you had either David Lee Roth or Sammy Alford.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to be unpopular because I like the Sammy stuff.
Really?
Yeah. I like them both, but if I had to pick one, I think Eddie really his playing changed.
Interesting.
I think because Sammy was an actual real guitar player.
Yeah.
And he brought Eddie back. Eddie had gotten into that keyboard.
Right. A lot of keyboard stuff.
But I think having Sammy there brought him back into that. But the bass player, Mark Anthony,
Anthony.
Michael Anthony.
Michael
Anthony. Mark Anthony was the Cleopatra.
Yes, he's a historian.
Michael Anthony, the backing vocals. He's
underrated.
Unreal.
Some of those first albums, he's so good.
It's just him. And it's like, I would see him live, and I'm like, is he the only one singing that backing part?
Right.
And he does it, and it's so high.
Yeah, it is very high.
But it's perfect.
Yeah, Chili Peppers have a lot of high backup vocals too. But our dynamic with Van Halen is that the main attraction was Eddie, but he wasn't the lead singer.
No.
So it's an odd dynamic. Yeah, everybody knows Eddie, and it's always a very odd dynamic with that.
Yeah. Well, and it was the brothers, and him and Alex just needed to jam together.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah,
and it was like, how cool is that? Like, you spent your whole life like just on tour with your brother.
Right. Must be pretty cool.
Yeah, and became very, very rich doing so.
Yes. Yeah. I have friends in the Bronx in New York City, and they would see posters of Van Halen and make fun of them.
Really?
And then I played Running with the Devil.
That was the second
album, right?
Because the first one was the Van Halen.
That's right, Van Halen. Yeah. So I played Van Halen 2 from beginning to end, and their mouths were open. They could, I'll never make fun of these guys. This is the best music I've ever, it's really, really great band.
Yeah.
When writing a song, Randy, how do you know when it's done?
It's never done.
That's the thing, huh?
It's interesting. So Phil and I do a lot of writing together, right? And we're really bad at when we're done, right? There's a point. I don't think you ever feel like I don't ever feel like it's done,
right?
Because even a year later, I'm like, should have done that differently. If I were, they say this about touring musicians too, right? You've played that song. It's your #1 hit, right? You have this #1 hit, and now you've played it for the last 30 years. When you go see them live, they're not playing it like it was on the album.
It was then. Yeah.
No, they've tweaked it along the way.
Yeah,
It's never done.
Yeah.
I think like with Phil and I, we get to the point where it's good enough, right? And we're our own worst critics. Right? We're working on one right now. We've been playing around with for 2 years. Wow. And he showed up at my house a couple months ago, and he's like, "There's this middle part. I never said anything, but I never felt like it fit, right?" Kind of thing.
The bridge.
It's kind of a bridge part. Yeah. We changed tempo in the middle and came back out of it, right? And then, but I always thought it was kind of clunky, but it worked, right? And he showed up at my house. And he goes, "Hey, I got this idea." And I said, "Okay." And he played it to me, and I'm like, "Well, that's it. That fixed the whole song. That fixed everything, right?" The song is kind of he came up with a riff. It was like this really kind of it was just like da 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 da, but it was like this little like Cajun kind of bendy, bent the string, and it sounded like it sounded Bayou to me. It sounded like Louisiana Bayou. That little riff, that was it. And so I wrote stuff around it, and then he wrote stuff around the stuff I wrote, and we ended up with this like kind of. My wife says it sounds like it should be on. She likes this Vampire Diaries show where they're down in like Louisiana. She's like, it sounds like it's in the it's in the swamp of Louisiana. And so we've written all the lyrics around this evil, like how it's the evil in people and the evil in the world kind of thing. But it's very like dark, like Halloweeny almost evil stuff, right? Like where the mangroves grow and like sorcery, like voodoo kind of stuff. And it just kind of worked. But yeah, for 2 years we've had this song.
It's amazing.
A rough recording of it, and both of us were like, I don't know, something's just not working, right? Can't put our finger on it. And here he is 2 years later, shows up and says, hey, what about this?
Wow.
And I was, oh my God, it's perfect. Right.
You hear this from musicians. Some songs take forever. Some songs take a minute.
Yeah, I have one that we recorded that my friends call my libertarian love song, and I wrote it in my living room in like an hour. The whole thing, the lyrics, the music, and everything. Just sitting around on my acoustic guitar, and I was in a band with Phil and another guy, Vic, and I brought it. I had played it to Phil on the acoustic. He was at my house, and so at practice, he said, hey, play Vic that song, So I played it for him. Vic's like, that's really good. And then, of course, Phil takes it and makes something out of it because that's what Phil does. But so he took it from acoustic to electric. It's pretty heavy now. But it was like the whole thing was written in like an hour, right? Now, it took us probably a couple months to kind of get the arrangement for the recording together, right?
Yeah, I always hear this. I always come back to the story of Bob Dylan when he saw Jimi Hendrix perform along the Watchtower. So he had just released a song,
right?
And within a couple of weeks, Jimi Hendrix was performing it, and then he sees him doing it and says, "I'll never perform that song. That was never my song.
That was never my song."
Because they believe that it comes to them, but it might not necessarily be them.
That's right.
There's another story I know where U2, Edge and Bono wrote a song, and they insisted it was. A Pretty Woman from Texas. Roy Orbison.
Roy Orbison.
They insisted it was his song, and they would not perform it, and they met him. And it was actually the very last song he recorded.
Really?
Yeah, beautiful song. Yeah, she's a mystery to me. But
I didn't know they wrote that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Bono and
but they probably heard his voice.
That's the thing.
While they were
hear
writing
these things, and they believe it's not theirs.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It gives me chills.
Yeah.
Randy, because it's just like
I stole it.
That's right. I took it.
They don't
it's
know
not
it.
mine, and they don't know it.
Yeah.
And for Bob Dylan and these greats to do that, I'm sure it happens all the time.
It is funny too because I'll write stuff and I'm like, that sounds like so. Right. Nah, they're not going to want it, and if they did, I'd let them have it.
Right.
But in my head, I'm like, who did I hear that? I'm hearing a voice. Right. Whose voice is that?
It's mysterious, isn't it?
It's really funny too because a lot of times, and I just saw this on Facebook in one of my musician groups that I'm in. Someone posted a little snippet and they said, "What song is this? I just wrote this, but I know it's something else." Right. Like it's just too familiar, right? And someone said, "Well, that's such and such," and like, "Oh, I knew it." Right. Like. And it gets harder and harder because I think there's been so much music out there.
And it's been, I hear comedians do the same thing. They come up with a joke. Wait, I don't think this is mine.
The subconscious.
Right. So my original question about when a song is, when is it done? There's many songs that kind of fall into the category of a bit overproduced.
Oh my God. Yes.
And we see this in the 80s. It could have been, I think of like Kim Carnes.
I
mean, that song on an acoustic guitar is beautiful.
Yes.
It's just, I know it was a #1 hit and maybe the song of the year that year, but it's just. And then there's songs that are
Betty
little.
Davis? Was that
Betty Davis? Betty Davis Eyes.
Yeah.
And there's some songs that they're kind of underproduced. You think it could use a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it's really up to the artist.
It's actually not.
Really?
No, it's the producer.
It's the producer.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting. I've known guys that got record deals. And like we go to Canada to record, right? Because the record company says, this is the studio you're going to. This is the producer we've hired.
Wow.
Right? These producers have formulas, right? They know what they're doing. And Phil actually told me a story about a guy he knew that like they got all the raw recordings done and they were doing the mix down, the actual production, right? Because you record everything raw, right? And then everything's done in post-production, right? And he's like, and he kept saying to the producer, well, I think we should do this. I said, the producer just made a phone call. The record company came and got the guy and shipped him back home.
Wow.
Like you don't cross the producer.
It's the producer.
It's the producer. I'm really bad at the names, but if you look at producers of the 80s, like 60% of all the #1 hits in the 80s were by two guys.
Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam wrote a lot of it.
Yeah.
Janet Jackson.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like, so it's their ear.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians, even new musicians, current musicians, complain because they'll go do the raw recordings. And with digital recording, I have a digital recording studio, right, in my house. I have a separate building that's my recording studio.
Wow.
And I can, like Phil and I can go and record, and I can take his guitar parts and completely rearrange them without him.
Amazing.
I'm like, well, this shouldn't be DAG. This should be GAD.
Wow.
And I can go onto the computer and go GAD. It's his guitar.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just changing the notes because it's all digital. And so I've watched YouTube videos where very famous musicians are like, well, this is the way I played it, but this is the way the producer did it. Now the producer made me $1 million and made me a #1 hit.
Right.
Right. But I had to relearn how to play the song the way the producer did it.
Has technology helped or hurt the industry?
I don't know. I don't know. You know what? I think it's helped the musician. I don't know if it's been good for the industry. You know, the setup I have at home is as good as any recording studio, big industry recording studio in the world.
Really?
Because the software is not that expensive.
Yeah, right.
And now it's all monthly, right? I can just get a monthly subscription to all the good stuff.
It gets
right?
updates.
It's like $12 a month, $15 a month, right? You know. No, I don't have a $1,000 microphone, but I have some pretty nice $300 microphones, right? $400 microphones. And the building was built for this purpose, so it's fairly isolated. It's pretty quiet in there, right? So I took the record company out of the mix. So there's always two parts of this business, right? It's I have to get. You get a record deal. Record deals weren't necessarily about recording; it was about distribution, right?
Right.
Because you had to be out at the record stores.
Right.
But that's not a thing anymore.
No.
I have an account I signed up for. It doesn't cost me anything to sign up for it. I can put an MP3 up there, right? And I can publish it to like 3 different stores with a push of a button. It'll give me my ISBN numbers and everything.
Wow.
And and I'm my own producer, right? I'm my own distributor and everything. I'm not getting radio play.
Right.
Right. So the people that are signing record deals now is more about getting radio play, digital radio, over the air radio, because that's really, unless you're getting radio play, someone has to discover you.
Yeah.
No one's telling them you're there.
Right.
Right. So someone has to discover you, and on the internet, right? But I know guys that do that, and they've been pretty good at it. The other thing is that if I'm an unsigned artist, like say on iTunes or on Google Play, I'm not allowed to charge as much for my recordings. Right. Well, they want those libraries, right? So for Sony, they're gonna let the Sony charge a little more, right? Because they want the Sony library on their download service, right? So I get it, right?
Right.
I think that the digital stuff, as far as streaming goes, has hurt the musicians.
Right.
So I'm no longer tied to having to get in a horrible deal with a record company.
Right.
Right. So those guys. I mean, I don't know if people know how that works, but in the day, I would get $100,000 advance to go record an album. That was an advance.
Right.
That wasn't a loan. It was a loan. It wasn't a give me.
Right.
So Bryan Adams has a great thing where he talks about the 3rd platinum album that went out, and he called his, or his first platinum album or whatever. He's like, well, we should be rolling in the money to his manager. And his manager said, no, we still owe him like $300,000.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's like,
unbelievable.
Yeah. And so that's, that now, because you don't need them for that, the negotiation's gotten better, but the streaming services are killing people.
They are.
There's no money in it.
Now, there's some success stories like Chance the Rapper, I believe, out of Chicago, right? He went self completely and he did it.
Yeah, and got discovered.
And
people had to find you.
Right. That's the thing.
People have to find you.
So he had a publicist and got it out. Yeah. So streaming ultimately is unfair to the artist, you believe?
I think the current models are tenuous at best. I mean, they're getting fractions of a penny per download.
It's like 8 period, or 8 zeros, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's fractions of a penny for download, where if I sold the album, I would have walked away with $1, right? No, I sold the album for $20 and I got $1, right, out of it. Or $1 came off my owing to the record company, right?
But hasn't the paradigm switched, right? So when we were kids, concert tickets were $10, $15.
It was great.
Because they're pushing the album.
That's right.
Right? Go buy our album. I saw so many shows.
Yeah, you go on tour to promote the album. Yeah.
And now they give the album away and they make all the money on the tour.
On the tour.
The tours are hundreds of dollars for the cheapest tickets.
It's ridiculous.
The paradigm is completely switched. So it has helped, though. I mean, obviously the 1%ers are there, but some of the touring bands, that's how they're making their money.
Yeah, but the cost of the tour has gotten way higher. So percentage-wise, I don't know that they're doing any better. I haven't seen those numbers, but
they will rely on merch. And
yeah,
they rely on,
you know, there was a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, about Kiss's one of their farewell tours. Oh, their third or fourth farewell tour, where
permanent,
yeah,
forever.
the Gene Simmons. The rumor is Gene Simmons invented the printing of the shirt on the fly, where you walk up and pick the shirt and they print it for you right there.
Wow.
Because he bankrolled all the merch personally, so he was making all the money on the merch, and so he didn't want to have all these T-shirts left over at the tour, so he could ship back the T-shirts that weren't printed.
True businessman.
Oh man,
yeah.
Say what you want.
Yeah.
That dude knows how to run a business.
Oh man, they have Kiss coffins.
Yeah, you know, one of the things they did is they like absolutely will let you merchandise everything.
Everything.
They were like the VHS of like merchandising. Like anybody could build one.
Right.
Yeah.
A whole nother area there.
Yeah.
Is AI going to help?
I don't know. I think that I don't think so. I think it's just going to muddy the market more. I mean, it's pretty saturated. You know, it's interesting that because of how easy it is to record, there's a ton of music out there. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it sure is.
And rap artists are actually the worst at it.
Really?
Yeah. When they go into it, like the person who plays my kind of music, right? It takes a while to build up 12, 15 songs, put a CD out, right? 10 to 15 songs, depending on, right? And we still talk about them in CDs or albums, but no one's doing that, right? No one's burning a CD.
Right.
Although vinyl's gotten pretty popular.
Yeah, it has. Resurgence vinyl.
There's actually a company here in town that had mothballed their record plant, their pressing plant.
Wow.
And we did some recording there. And then the guy was telling us, he took us on a tour of the facility, and they have a room that is all CD burners. And there's nothing going on, right? And he's like, well, this was hot for like a minute, right? We were burning tons of CDs because they do production work. And he said the thing that was funny is we had a whole record pressing plant in the basement. And when vinyl went out, we thought, well, we'll get rid of it and we'll do something else down there. It was too big and heavy to get rid of.
Wow.
So we just kind of closed the basement door and left it, right? And he said, well, then we built this, and you know, we built the CD burning plant and all that. He said, we haven't done a CD in ever, but we had to fire the vinyl plant back up, and we run 24/7.
Wow.
Because everybody got rid of their vinyl pressing equipment. And so now that's what everybody wants. They want vinyl. But I think with so a rapper will go in and they'll record literally hundreds of beats.
Right.
You know, they call them beats.
Sure.
Right? And so they're just doing one after the other.
Tracks.
It's all day long.
Yeah.
They're doing rap all day long, and they'll put out 100 songs out into the ether, and hopefully one of them will stick.
Interesting.
So it's a volume.
Oh, it's a volume play.
Where like, you know, more classical rock and that kind of thing, like I do, right? That the non-rap stuff is, you know, you work through the songs, the melodies. It's very much structured, and so there's already a lot out there. And I think with AI, and I play around with AI all the time, and I think with AI, what we're going to end up with is it's even going to be harder.
Really?
Well, we talk about being discovered, like someone finding you. Well, now I'm competing with how many people that have absolutely no, I hate to say it this way, but no talent whatsoever.
Right.
Right. That can just know how to get the AI to do what they want. And they're publishing song after song after song. Right. So that's just going to be one more person I have to compete with.
It's interesting. You look at them as competition.
Well, on the market they are.
Right.
And it's not, I don't see it as competition for the music. I see it as competition for getting noticed. Right. You're competing for that little bit of eye space or ear space that someone has in their day. Right. I know musicians that are, it's like an us and them thing. Like you go out and play with them and they'll like they'll sandbag you. Like really? Oh, well, your sound was a little off, or, you know, whatever. I never got that, because I always thought like music is very personal to person, and we can both write songs that somebody will like, right, or not like, right? So I never saw musicians as competition as far as the music goes. Right. But the amount of available space on the billboard is very small, right?
How do you find new artists?
Honestly, one of my favorite things, like I use iHeartRadio app all the time. And what I'll do is someone will turn me on to somebody, and you can build stations. Right. So like Rival Sons, a friend of mine, my best friend actually put me onto this band Rival Sons, which is by the time I usually find people, they're already defunct. I'm like, I really like this band. Yeah, they broke up 2 years ago. God damn it, you know. But what I'll do is I'll go out and build a radio station. I want a Rival Sons radio station. Well, when they do that, They're like, okay, here's Rival Sons and other bands that are like
Similar,
Rival Sons.
right?
And so you're like, that's how I find them. Like I'll find other bands that the AI probably thinks is very close. Yeah. And so I've discovered a lot of bands like that, where it's like I find a sound I like and go that way.
Right. So we're here in Columbus, Ohio. Logically's second event, LogicCon, is going on. What are some of your goals for these couple of days?
Oh man, to survive, I think was my first goal. I think it's been really good. This is my first time here. I didn't come last year. This year, I kind of got recruited, to help out. I'm a little different because I'm not a cybersecurity person. I'm not an MSP guy. I'm actually an operations guy. My career has been building departments and MSPs and operational groups and that PMOs, not MSPs, but operational groups and things like that. And so that's what I do. I'm the behind the scenes guy, right? So I guess my goal this was just to kind of meet people. We're also spread out too. And to get to some of the people I've met this week are people I've worked with for 4 years and never shook a hand, right? Kind of a thing. Also meet some of the customers. I don't, because I'm not in that front of the house, right? I don't actually get to intermingle with customers so much. So I have my departments are procurement and quoting and the project management office, and I have sales support, and I have facilities and travel, right? So I always say I'm all the things that get the product to the customer that aren't technical, right? So all of those people, they're all my group, they're all my department. So yeah, just kind of meet people and kind of get more familiar with like our product line and the people we sell to, I think is really where I'm at with this week.
It's a great company, great event.
And this has been great.
It's been really great.
Like MJ's a rock star.
She is incredible. Yes, MJ Penn, incredible. So I started my MSP. By the way, I was the first MSP Logically bought.
No way.
Yeah, in 2019.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it WinXNet?
Yeah, when it was WinXNet.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Opened in Portland, Maine. Yeah. So I started my MSP in the 90s. Was working way too hard, Randy. It was working 14, 16 hour days.
I get that. Yeah.
Got myself up to 340 pounds. Just eating poorly, and doctor says to me, if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate.
Oh my God.
Scared the hell out of me. I'm driving home, punching the steering wheel, So I spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 130 pounds and kept it off. It's not a finishing line. You got to change what you do forever.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And people want a quick answer. What's your secret? And there's no secret. Any discipline. That's how I got it off. That's how I keep it off. Focus, routine. And
so I did the same thing.
Did you?
I've lost 75 pounds.
Wow.
And is that right? I want to do that wrong. No, I've lost 65 pounds.
Wow.
But it's the same thing. It was just a matter of, what am I doing?
Right.
What am I eating? How am I eating?
What's your priority?
Yeah, what's your priority?
And how does discipline play a role in your life?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah, every day. Because I have no filters and no boundaries in my world. And so I really have to, I actually struggle with it every day.
With discipline?
Discipline, yeah. Because it's especially around food. I have a lot of problems.
I love food.
I love food.
God.
Yeah, and it's portion control.
Why is it
problems.
so good?
I don't know. It's just wrong, isn't it? we could talk about the neuroscience around why food is so good, right? Like all the fat and salt, and how our taste buds react with our brain, and McDonald's has got that down to a science.
Yeah, they sure do.
But no, it's the discipline thing's interesting. It's just my wife and I now. My oldest son is 38. My youngest son is 28.
Wow.
We have a 30. We have 38, 36, and 28. My daughter's 36, and we have 8 grandkids. And so it's just my wife and I. We moved out of our 3,000 square foot chalet into our 700 square foot cabin in 19, and then I built the studio next door.
Awesome.
And all that. But it's but every day it's like so last night playing the show here, right? And I said this on stage. I have people say like, "Oh, when you get on stage, that's your alter ego, right? You're up there." And I said, "No, when I'm in the office, that's my alter ego. The guy I am is that really crazy guy, that undisciplined rock guy on stage. That's who I am, right? And the guy that I play at work is that disciplined, got to get things done, got to do it right, do the right thing all the time. So my nature is not that. My nature is I want to go on tour. That's all I want to do. Right. I want to sleep all day, go on tour, and I'm not much of a partier anymore, but you know, my dad, my stepdad, I call him my dad, but my stepdad passed in January, and he was 101. And he last year, my mom got hurt, and they live in Missouri, so I spent a lot of time in Missouri helping take care of him. And he told me, he said, "I'm so glad you never got really famous when you were younger." He said, "I'm pretty sure you'd be dead." Right? He said, "I don't think you'd have survived it." He said, "I think you'd be okay now." Right? But back in the day, he said, I'm pretty sure that'd have been a bad thing for you. Right? And because I think we talk about, you know, we have a nature. And for me, my nature is a very different thing than what I have to live on a regular basis. Right? But I think we learn. My wife calls it wisdom. You know, we become wiser, and we realize that those things are destructive and counterproductive, and that kind of thing. So I think from a discipline standpoint, I think I'm very disciplined. But still not as much as I should be in the food area and the you know, that kind of thing. But I think for the most part, it's a daily thing. And I kind of feel like most people are like that.
Daily, yeah. Beauty is often wasted on the youth.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a few that I've seen that I'm like, how old is that? How old is she? Like, you know, like, yeah, that's pretty good for like 60. What the heck?
Yeah, it is. We are living longer now.
We are.
Yeah, which is really, really refreshing. Well, it's interesting. You said that you were undisciplined on the stage. To me, you seem disciplined. You're following a structure. You're following. You're not burning out your voice. You're, you know.
That's just. I don't know. That's not.
You said you're undisciplined when you're on stage. Explain.
I'm just having a good time. Nothing else matters.
Isn't that? Aren't you still falling within some kind of? That's very interesting how you phrase it as undisciplined.
I don't even think about it that way.
Yeah,
that is interesting because I don't think about it.
Right.
I'm just that's me letting loose.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I love talking to musicians, and as you could tell, and sometimes I say, come on the show, and they say, well, I'm not disciplined. I can't be on your, I said, well, you're a musician. Does it require some kind of, you know, you still have to know chord, structure, theory. You still have to, so sometimes, not all the time, I could kind of push back on that. But it seems to me.
That is interesting because it does require a framework.
Yes.
Right? There's a framework.
Yeah. And you're not, it's a song. It has structure. It has, you know, whether you created it or not.
So there is a framework that you work within.
Yes.
I don't know if I'd call it discipline though.
But you're not.
I think when people think discipline, they think something I'm doing that is not something I enjoy doing.
Fascinating. You relate it to that.
Yeah.
You don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
With this ongoing theory, Randy, that discipline is a spectrum.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Of different things, and there's no wrong answer. I just people ask me how I lost weight, and I say discipline. So I
change behavior.
Change behavior. That's fascinating perspective. Do you have music up on Apple Tunes and iTunes that people can?
I don't.
Oh, you don't. And Spotify, you don't.
I don't. No. Actually, it's one of Phil and I talk about this all the time. We're both, you know, I'm 57.
Yeah.
Right. He's my age. We're the same age and close to. And we talk about this all the time. Like we have all this music that we've got. And I always call them rough recordings, right? Because you work through it, and you're like, okay, we'll change this, we'll change that, and I've got them on my phone. I've got recordings everywhere. And I'm like, it's going to be really sad because we're going to die,
right?
And we're not going to have anything that we can point to, right? Like we really got to get these things recorded, and, you know, out. And I think it's time, and you know, and we're at that point in our lives where every time we see each other, we're like, yeah, it's time, let's do it. Okay, I'll call you. Yeah, you call me. I'll call you, and then. You know, it's like a month later, we'll run into each other like, oh, we gotta get this done. Yeah.
I hope you do. Yeah.
There's some, I mean, we're at the point where it's like, we have some stuff that I'm like,
people might like.
I would put it up against anything out there right now. I mean,
sure.
You know, that's me though.
Right.
Yeah.
Still. I mean, there's 4 million podcasts.
I know. Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, somebody's going to like it and somebody's not. You know, it's. Right. So if anybody watching, listening, and they want to get in touch with you, probably LinkedIn would be the best place?
LinkedIn would be the best
Randy
place.
Hall, we'll make sure we'll put it in the, I'll connect with you.
If they're interested in the music stuff, it's at freerhallmusic.com. Freer, which is my legal name. F-R-E-E-R, Hall, music.com.
Okay.
And that's got I've got stuff on YouTube.
You do?
Yeah, it's all linked from the website, my Facebook, my YouTube, and all that.
Very cool.
So
Randy, great talk with you.
It was
brother.
fun.
You did such a great job last night. We were mesmerized, and you kept us rocking, man. I appreciate
it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was MJ too, by the way.
Yes.
I was actually had my procurement team out at a function, and my phone vibrates, and I look down. It's MJ. I hear you're headlining LogicCon this year. This was a couple months ago,
That's awesome.
right? A couple months ago, and I looked at it. I thought, and I responded.
You got
I said,
a gig.
I said, no. I said, headlining how? Like that, because I'm like, you don't want me speaking at LogicCon. And she sent me like a GIF of a guy playing guitar, and I said, well, I guess, right? I guess that's fine. And I didn't know what I literally thought I would be set up in the back of the room, turned down, so people could eat and talk. And I came in and they're like, "Oh, you got to be on stage," and I'm like, "Oh, this is not what I signed up for."
Great.
But it was fun, and you guys were great.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference that everybody was into it.
Yeah.
Right.
We were.
I always one of my problems when I play is I always feel like I'm intruding. Right. I feel like I'm intruding into everybody else's world. And so I never take my guitar where I'm not invited. And I'm even then I'm like at a bonfire or whatever. I'm playing kind of quiet. And so when people are into it, then it gives me it's like an okay to it's okay to go ahead, right? Yeah. So it was really you guys made it a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Randy.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
Yeah, this was fun.
Great talking with you.
You too.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypinz.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.